Today is February the 28th, 2024. It being 6:30, I call the meeting's been called to order. The meeting is being audio recorded, held remotely on Zoom, if there is anybody on Zoom, and will be live streamed on RCTV. The RMLD Board of Commissioners recognize the importance of hearing public comment at the discretion of the chair on items on the official agenda. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressed by the board, addressing the board, and the board shall state that, excuse me, their name as prior to speaking. It is the role of the chair to maintain order on all public comment and ensuing discussion. We have no members participating remotely, so we can proceed forward. Public comment. Jason, want to bring anything on the Citizen Advisory Board?
From what we met last week, I think he's given an update a little bit on what we did, but
Okay. Okay. I don't see any liaisons to the board. There's nobody giving us public comment either at this point. So we do item 3. Marlena, this is her last meeting.
Yep.
wow.
I went by fast.
Do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I would like to say that I've learned so much under the tutelage of first Colleen O'Brien. I really have to nod to her and her team, and Greg Phipps, our general manager, and Erica Morris and Erin McDonough, Bill Bullock, Dave Talbot, Jason Small, Bill Pacino, Pam Daskalakis, and Bob Coulter. You have all been fantastic to work with. We are the nicest board in town. I can't, I recommend it. You will learn a lot and you will work with really nice people. The end. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Meeting lamp over there.
That is so cool.
Okay.
It really is cool. You plug it in, it actually spins. You're gonna say, "Hey, this is kind of
And
cool."
it's time of use.
It's
Oh.
I love use. Oh my god. David stuck.
Okay.
Thank you. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I attended the Citizen Advisory Board last week, which was always a pleasure for me to attend. We're here to see many of the updates again tonight at this point.
Mhm.
We had an update on the finance and accounting incentive programs was reviewed at the meeting. We reviewed the goals also. General manager's report. I do want to mention that I did, since I know we were doing the review tonight of the general manager, I did ask the Citizen Advisory Board for some of their input, and they were very positive, and I will go in more detail when we get to that item on the agenda. Okay, now let's move to the minutes. Your motion?
I'm gonna read it.
Do it as
Yeah.
we like.
Oh,
My last
okay.
week's your last night.
So last meeting she gets to do it.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve the October 25th, 2023 open session meeting minutes as presented on the recommendation of the general manager and the board secretary. Do we have a second?
Seconded, so moving seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, that motion carries 5-0. All right, we go to procurements.
Great. So we have 2 procurements tonight. The 2, we split them into 2 different pieces. So, as you know, we do regular replacement of the various vehicles in our fleet. Do you want to get that?
Okay,
Super.
is she on?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see her on the screen. Is she up on the screen somewhere? Hi, Karen. I see you just joined us. Do you want to say anything? Want to say anything, Karen? You just joined us.
She's getting ready.
Hang on, I have to find the unmute button. Thanks. You know what? Can anyone clarify for me if we have a commissioner whose last meeting is tonight?
Well,
Right?
which one?
Yes, 4 or 5.
You know, if we do, I just want to make sure it doesn't go unremarked. If this is the last meeting, I just wanted to thank Marlena Bitta for all of her efforts. And we've done some amazing things in the past 3 years. And I know this ongoing Board of Commissioners will continue on that path. But I just wanted to thank you, and I recognize the volunteer efforts and time and commitment from all of you. But just wanted to make sure we gave her a big thanks and to welcome her back, or we'll just sign her up for something else.
Thanks, Karen. It's been a great 3 years.
All right, very good. Thank you, Karen. Okay. All right, let's move on to the procurements now. Greg?
Great. So, on the pickup trucks, as we've talked about before, we want to try and experiment with, some of the electric pickup trucks. So we end up splitting this into 4, regular, gas-powered pickup trucks, and then 2, which we'll talk about in just a second, electric ones. So the first 4, we did the bid process, sent out the original bid on the 29th, January 29th. It went out to 8 different companies. The request was for 4 pickup trucks, year 2023 or newer. We're trading in 4 vehicles, several which are end of service life. And we received bids from 2 companies, Stoneham Ford and Gervais. The bids were opened on February 14th. The bids were analyzed and reviewed by the staff and recommended to the general manager. And at the end of the day, that bid works out to be $209,132. Delivery will be in about 6 weeks. They were the responsive bidder, and there were no exceptions.
Okay.
Questions? They'll be white, of course.
Do I have a motion?
But,
Okay, let's get the motion read first, and then we can have questions, okay?
Move that bid IFB 2024-08 for 4 pickup trucks, year 2023 or newer, with 4 trade-in vehicles be awarded to Gervais for $209,132 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder on the recommendation of the general manager.
Seconded?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Bob, go ahead.
I'll hold it till the next IFB.
Hold
Right.
it next time. Okay.
IFB 2024-09, 2 electric pickup trucks, year 2023 or newer with trade-in. Oh, the motion is that move that bid IFB 2024-09 for 2 electric pickup trucks, year 2023 or newer with trade-in be awarded to Gervais for $141,857 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder on the recommendation of the general manager.
Okay. Since they're very related, I will take discussion on both motions, but we will vote on them separately. Okay? All right, Bob?
You want to vote the first one?
No, we'll vote them right afterwards, separately. We'll have discussion on both.
Second.
Yeah, I got it for here. Pam, second those. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
So I guess on the second one, if we look at the cost differential, right, between the 2 items, one's about 52, the other one's about 72, right? So it's
20 grand.
Yeah, 20 grand, significant,
Yep.
right? And I'm all for electrification of the fleet, but I understand, what we're going to be experimenting, but do we say 1 versus 2? I know the reason why I say that, let's try 1. Being in the industry, I know they are good, but if you're going to use these during tough times, they have a very limited use. Day-to-day operation, great vehicle, but when you get into storm mode, it's a completely different animal to use an electric vehicle. Batteries get consumed very, very quickly, and they're not, you're in a 24/7 operation. It's a different style vehicle. So I just want to make sure that we all understand that it is when you're in that mode, these trucks aren't the ones that you're going to be using per se, would there be any consideration of trying 1 versus 2 vehicles?
In terms of the use, 2 things. A is both vehicle, but on the electrics, we did the extended range option. So that's got a bigger battery. The second thing is we have the DC fast charger up at the library, and we also are putting in DC fast charge. No, I hear it'll be a dual port DC fast charger here, so it'll be less than an hour. So the answer to your question is we're going to learn. We're actually going to use one of them is going to be for either the line foreman, the general line for the assistant line foreman, and the other one's going to be in grid assets. So we're actually going to use them in two different scenarios. Obviously, in storm mode, storm modes, depends upon each individual storm. But the thought process here is we're going to put them in two different departments to get a better idea of how they work. But in terms of the recharging, which is the critical issue, we'll end up putting. We're in the process of putting a DC fast charger next to the station one, so that when we come back, we can charge them quickly, even in storm mode.
Second follow-up. Price does seem very good for an electric pickup. They're usually running about 100 grand ish.
Yeah. Well, you can see the other ones. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. What are these equipped with? That was my other question. How are these coming? I mean, are they big? Obviously.
Well, they're work trucks, but they're work trucks with extended range. And so the other one from Liberty Chevrolet, those are the WT. So the Chevrolet WT4s, which are just coming out. They're in production right now. The Lightning is the one that we've selected, which is with Gervais. That's been in production for about 18 months. We chose it primarily for a cost reason, again, because we're learning to go with the Lightnings versus the Chevrolet WTs. But the Chevrolet WT4s, they were designed up to be an electric vehicle. The Lightnings were design-wise, we'll call it a retrofit, but we actually talked to Hingham and Norwood. Norwood just picked up two of them. Hingham picked up one. So there's several of them in the fleet that have been in the other MLPs. Everybody seems to be pretty happy with them. But they tend to be more in the management team than in the line crew. So we're trying to put one in the line crew. So to answer your question, so they're not fancy trucks, but they're not bare. I mean, the focus is on range, right? So they're work trucks for the specs, and going back to your one versus two of the recommendations, we want to try them in we're trying two different scenarios, and it's coming. So we want to learn.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion?
Good question.
Not, I will take the first motion, which is the non-electric vehicles. So all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, that motion carries 5-0. We go on to the second motion and further discussion. Not, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, that motion carries.
Thank you.
We're on to the finance and accounting.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Pleased to present this evening's finance and accounting milestone update. Just some high level information. Calendar year 2024 budget is now currently live in the system. We're exploring what's called an ERP software to streamline our AP process. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Plan. Also, our 2% net plant payments to all 4 towns were issued back in December, totaling $913,303, with the following towns receiving the following amounts: Reading $190,735,000, North Reading $167,808, Linfield Center $61,110, and then Wilmington $493,650.
Now, this was all set by the 20-year agreement.
Is there an architect in the house?
Back in the 80s.
And it's tied to kilowatt hour sales from that.
By kilowatt sales
That's why there's difference.
within the territory.
Correct.
So
Agreement refreshed in 2020. We refreshed our payment, right?
Yep. Yep, 2020.
Well, the refresh was actually in the town of Reading. This piece stayed, this goes back to the 20-year.
Right, but this is the 20-year agreement. The 20-year agreement has been renewed. I believe it'll last, it's gonna last longer than I will. It'll last 50 years at the minimum right now, so. And hopefully it'll go forward after that too. Okay,
So in addition to the payments to the towns based off of the 20-year agreement, we also have the below the line payment going to the town of Reading totaling $1.269 million. And that was also processed in December. Moving on. The next slide here is a preliminary cash balance summary as of 12/31/2023. Please note that this is a snapshot in time in December. We are still closing out our books, so our final numbers will look different just as part of adjusting journal entries once trial balance is completed and the auditor sets the allocations, which could change the mix here. Ultimately, we have approximately, as of 12/31, $62 million, of which $31.7 million is in restricted cash. $29 million is in unrestricted cash. So our operating funds, our miscellaneous cash reserve, which is zero there, and our petty cash. And then we have a small amount, $1.4 million in the restricted investments sinking fund. Moving on.
just a couple questions. Depreciation fund, that's high because of the potentially of the new substation. Yeah,
Correct.
right, so that will be reduced going forward at some point. Do you know what level that'll end up at potentially?
Yeah, in fact, I will sign it off later on tonight, but 8 million of that will move over to the construction fund.
Okay.
Last year we did 6.5 million. A year ago we did 6.5 million. So
The other question I had is on the rate stabilization fund, that's 7 million. Is there any particular plan as to what to use that, how that's going to be used going forward?
well, yes. In terms of how it's going to be used going forward, it's the rainy day fund for power supply. What we haven't yet sat down as a group, or we haven't presented to you guys, is to revisit the target level. What we've been tentatively keeping it right now is about 10% of annualized power supply cost. We don't take anything out of it. And so the increase of balance is primarily due to, we haven't done anything. Last time we took an amount out of it was 1.6 million, and we did that back in 2021 to bring it back down to the 6.2 or 6.1. I have to look at the exact number, but I know we took $1.6 million out on September, October, November, and December of 2021. We haven't done anything since then. But we could take an action item, which it is an action item, at some upcoming meeting, to say what's the proper balance for that amount. So we'll actually formally schedule that, and we'll put a placeholder. Let's make that a May event, May board meeting. Typically the power supply cost, and the reason why that will probably be a good time is the higher power supply costs are tied to higher load, which tend to be in the summertime due to primarily air conditioning type stuff. So it'll be good timing.
Moving on.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, keep going.
This is our preliminary operating budget versus our actuals through December 31st of last year. Keep in mind, November and December financials are being finalized as part of our year-end closeout process. The trend includes preliminary numbers that we do have for December and November and December. And you'll see that the orange line is our cumulative expended totals, while our budgeted line, straight line, mind you, is our budgeted totals. You'll see that as a result of we have softer expended numbers as a result of lower fuel costs as part of, what's going on in the energy market. As we move on to capital spending is growing, and it is growing in anticipation of the new Wilmington substation. The first milestone payment that we have made for substation number 6 was done in December for a total of $1.4 million. Now, keep in mind that this is a prepaid expense similar to construction work in progress. So I wanted to make sure that we captured that here in this slide, but because of the way that the accounting works, we have to wait until the station is commissioned in order for it to fall into the right bucket. And come to the main show here. So periodically what we like to do is present outside services costs for the board here to review and just get an update on. I'm pleased to report that in calendar year 2023, we had expended $352,065 in legal expenses, outside legal services. That is down from calendar year 2022, where we expended $539,000 the year before. Now you'll see that there are various different buckets. We have engineering, legal services, we have general manager's office, HR, integrated resources, and materials management. Under the materials management line item there, you'll see that we spent approximately $217,000. Keep in mind that higher expenditure versus the other line items there is due to the procurement of AMI and MDMS, the New Wilmington substation, and the procurement of transformers, which went through several iterations, as you recall, previous meetings. However, with that said, even with those higher numbers within the materials management legal services line item, we are still well under budget from where we were last year. One quick caveat you'll see in the red up there, there's an additional $175,000 in legal charges under the construction work in progress account. This is to be capitalized, but we can't capture it within the capital budget at this time, as it's tied to Maple Meadows and substation number 6, the New Wilmington substation. Of that, $145,000 was spent on Maple Meadows, and the balance was to the new substation.
So just a clarification, is the 175 is in the 352 or
No,
outside?
outside.
So where is, until it's capitalized, where is it sitting now?
It's outside. It sits in a holding account essentially because
It's like a prepaid expense.
Okay.
Correct. Like a
On the
prepaid
balance sheet.
expense account.
it's on the balance sheet, but we can't.
Right.
The best way to explain is we can't categorize it as either an expense or a capital expenditure
Right.
until the project either becomes actualized or once it becomes actualized, it goes into capital. If it doesn't move forward, then it becomes an expense, but we can't record it as such until then. Right.
Thanks.
Behind the 21,000, the general manager's legal expenses. What makes that up?
Those are individual discussions that the general manager inquires on various topics. Everything from probably the most recent, half a dozen different ones that
Okay.
yeah, they're typically $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 tickets, depending upon what they are.
Okay.
Last one I did was relative to how we would engage. The concept was basically being able to have a vendor actually staff an engineer on our team for 6 months to learn. So that's an example.
It's a low number, so.
Yeah, well, we talk a lot, but
Been a lot more in years past. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's okay to continue to
Go
ask
ahead, keep
questions on it? Okay, so in terms of the providers that we use, do we have kind of a core
Yes.
pool of firms? Do we have a
So
lot?
I actually have a breakdown in my notes. Out of the $352,000, $317,000 was to KP Law. The balance went to some smaller law firms, including Duncan and Al.
Okay. And is the difference versus 2022 a demand reduction, or did we negotiate a rate reduction?
In 2022, if I recall correctly, a lot of it was within human resources, and that had to do with the contract for our unions.
contractor. The answer to your
Demand
question
reduction.
is volume.
Fine, yeah, okay.
All right. Keep going.
Moving on. We're looking at outside services. For outside services, again, we broke it up by each individual area. Accounting outside services was for $40,000. Building and maintenance was 13.3 or $13,300. E&O was 29,600. Engineering service or energy services, 38,905. Engineering outside services, 14,522. The GM's office, $31,932. Human resources, 68,694, and then MIS outside services for $185,000. Now, outside that, again, we have construction work in progress funds, which is an additional $39,000 for engineering services to be capitalized as part of our Maple Meadows project, and that was with one vendor, AECom. Now, in going through the individual line items, the accounting services is for our annual audit that's conducted each year, which we're ramping up along with our actuary reports. And that's for that $40,000. Building and maintenance, there was contracting with Burns and McDonald and Damotech. Engineering, again, PLM, power systems, and utility services at Vermont. The GM, we had charged the APPA membership to that particular line item. HR was First Person Tech, IT Avalon, and ZipRecruiter for our recruiting efforts. And then MIS, the biggest charge is AdviseX, along with Cogsdale and Cannon. So looking into the future, I'm actually really excited to discuss this piece here. As I indicated earlier on in my presentation, we're looking at an ERP system in order to automate, to bring a little bit of, technology, I guess you could say, bringing it into the 20th century or 21st century in terms of how we conduct our AP process. One of the action items I had for last year was to start to explore and see where our strengths and weaknesses were in terms of processing our invoices. As we continue to grow as an organization, the number of invoices and payables that goes out is increasing exponentially. So in order to manage that process, what I've done is I've already started to look into essentially putting together a package that we will bring to this board in the coming months in order to automate our AP process. Right now, the current process is manually performed with 8 individual steps before it gets to you folks to sign off. This process has potential issues such as missing invoices, duplicates, and human error. We are literally manually entering in every single invoice into the system, and it's with, data entry. So I was tasked essentially to go out and look at 4 different vendors, and I have come up with 4 vendors, which are Parasoft, Stamply, Tipalti, and Fraxion. In the last 2 weeks, we've met with all 4 individual vendors before even soliciting or asking for quotes, just to get a feel of what they can offer. In meeting with both Stamply and Parasoft, they seem to be ahead of the pack. Tipalti and Fraxion, which we use Fraxion in-house for eRequester, didn't quite have the necessary modules, in particular the batching of the invoices, which goes through the routing process that eventually gets to you guys. We are following up with both Stamply and Parasoft next week, or actually, either this week or next week. I'm lost in terms of the calendar here. And what we're going to do is once we finally make that determination, we're going to put out an RFP, essentially soliciting quotes to make sure that we get the best price from the vendor. And then the idea is that this software will interact with our Great Plains software, which is where all of our accounting takes place. And the idea is that I want to reduce the amount of, I don't want to call it busy work, but the manual data entry that takes place on a day-to-day basis, everything from stamping of invoices to manually routing them out to the managers, getting them back, sending it over to purchasing, getting it back, and so on and so forth. So the idea is to go from 8 steps down to about 3 or 4 steps, where a lot of the paper passing is eliminated. So the goal is to implement it later this year, and I'm trying to be aggressive with that process because right now we've gotten to the level that the amount of invoices that we process on a bi-weekly basis, or actually a weekly basis, bi-weekly is for the payments, the weekly basis, the weekly warrant is becoming, to the point where I need to have better controls over it in order to have, reasonable assurance that, we're being efficient in terms of our processing invoices. Right now, just to give you a bit of insight, basic things like determining which vendors are net 15, net 30, net 45, net 60. There's no way to just hit a button and get that information out there. Invoices coming in are manually received, reviewed, and then sent out. The idea is that we would have what they call OCR to scan the invoices, which will then interface with our accounting software, which will then be able to tell us, okay, whose invoice is this and where is it going to? So I'm very excited about this process, and I think this is going to be a worthwhile venture for RMLD in order to essentially step into the new century.
So you said kind of 2 were seem to be rising to the top in terms of the business requirements. Is the plan to send the RFP to all 4?
Yes, I'm going to send it out to all 4.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to look at who can actually deliver the services best.
Sure.
If I cannot collate the invoices and have it batched, that would immediately kick it out.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have a set of minimum business requirements.
Correct.
That if you don't check yes to every single one of those, you're out. And then you have a desired business requirements where you can do more detailed
Correct.
evaluation. Okay. And this is just AP. We're not doing any procurement.
We're starting with AP, and then we're going to move to procurement. We're going to move to other areas.
So is that part of the evaluation criteria with
Correct.
the capability to? Okay.
Correct.
Great.
One request, when this system gets created, when we go and we have to approve via an email process, would there be any type of web-based system that we can go in and say,
That's the
Yeah.
goal.
that's
That's the
goal?
gold standard.
Okay, take that away, but that functionality will include, we're not internal, right? So some kind of a,
You guys are part of the process.
well, as long as because we're external, so we're,
Yeah, but you are external, but the answer to your question is that's the intent.
some kind of VPN process for us to come in and oversee that. Yeah, as long as that's included, because that is the IT based that, we need to be remote accessed in, so.
Correct.
Okay.
So part of the process is involving John Pelletier to make sure that we meet all the security requirements as we move forward. At this point right now, I just need to make sure that they can, rise to the occasion and have those processes in place. Once I know that, then I can bring John into the process in order to make sure that it meets the necessary security requirements.
Additional question, in terms of the implementation plan, are you assuming in-house resources will execute the implementation? Will you use resources from the vendor? Will you use a third
So-
party?
In speaking to the vendors, they actually have resources that will come in and do the implementation. It's not like you're installing Microsoft Office on your computer.
Sure.
They actually walk you through the process and help implement it. And then my understanding, and again, we're still very much early on in this process, is that they provide support as part of the package.
Post-implementation support?
Correct.
Yeah.
Ongoing maintenance is becoming, you'll see that a little bit later on, but making sure that we are current versions and that we have ongoing support is critically important. The other element, and the reason why Ben's mentioning the IT team as well, we are highly sensitized to cybersecurity threats. We'll talk about that in the general manager update. And so anytime we have open ports of any sort and how it interacts, et cetera. So the IT team will be closely working with the implementation. And so there's the business process stuff, and then there's how's it tie into our IT platforms, and where do we host it, and all those kind of questions. But We want it to be secure, and it might seem innocuous since we're just approving POs, but any opening will be tapped.
And as part of this, are you looking at the existing processes and trying to eliminate steps that are not value added?
Correct.
simplify
We've
steps?
actually already looked at those processes. And one of the things that I learned from my years at the MBTA is that when you invite a consultant in, you want to make sure that you already have a determination of where you want to go with the processes and use them as subject matter experts. So I've sat down with my team, in particular, my accounting manager, and the staff accountant, and we mapped out the entire process, soup to nuts, which you recall I showed you that little slide deck. The idea is that by understanding our processes intimately, then I can go through and say, okay, here's the bottlenecks. How do we want to eliminate these bottlenecks? And then we say, okay, so the consultant or the software company, this is where we would like to get to. This is where we want to go. Can you take us there or not?
Yeah, I think the way you approach it is exactly like you said, eliminate, simplify the process, then standardize, then automate as the last step.
Correct.
Done those things that.
One other question, it's kind of a scope, common names, SAP, PeopleSoft, that you use for integrated, accounting, purchasing,
Correct.
all those types of systems. Now, this is
So
a,
PeopleSoft, having worked with PeopleSoft at the MBTA, the
Just two
MBTA
names,
is 5,000
Yeah.
employees large,
Yeah.
and we have a gazillion-dollar budget.
Right.
Here at RMLD, we have,
Yeah.
a $100,000 budget. We're not going to be looking at PeopleSoft because PeopleSoft would not fit into, our needs here. It would be going way over the top. So I'm trying to be mindful of products out there that meet and match our size as an organization, and not just, go with the SAPs of the world or the PeopleSofts of the world, because then you're talking a gazillion dollars.
yep, no, good, that's exactly, just two common names, but that's, I wanted to get scale and scope and
Right.
looking at, so you're just looking to put a piece in and not overhaul everything because you already have a system in place.
Yeah, but there is a plan to look at automating further down the stream. We already talked about the e-requester piece, which is an existing process, but we're looking a couple of years down the road in terms of how to improve our work order system, which drives the line cost and the engineering cost, et cetera, because that's the system right now is not very well integrated. So we're doing a block, but we're trying to do it in the context of a larger vision, big picture, but not PeopleSoft scale. Yeah.
I mean, AP drives the organization. People need to get paid. Vendors need to get paid. If I can get that taken care of first, then I can look at, contracts and procurement, and then we can go in other areas too.
So, as I remember correctly, the AP system then goes up to the town hall. How is this going to interface with the town hall?
So the warrant is actually printed out and sent to the town hall in that manner. So just as on my board that I sit on, we vote on a warrant, we sign off on the warrant as school committee. And then that physical warrant goes up to town hall. The process wouldn't change.
The current process we have right now is all Adobe. So when you get Adobe, so we did do some streamlining last year or year before last. So it goes through, after it crosses my desk, it automatically goes to whoever is assigned. And then once that, it automatically goes to the town hall. So that from that perspective, there is a digital element already tied to it. But like their responsibility is to process it, right? Our responsibility is to make sure that it's put together properly.
And approved by you folks.
Right. Further questions? Okay, discussion. I see none. Let's move on to power supply.
All right. Oh, well,
one more.
we got,
Oops, sorry,
we got one more slide.
sorry.
One more.
Source of the funds.
Jumped in.
Yes. All right. So last year we submitted a bunch of grants. We got responses back, to which the Department of I almost said Department of Education. That's my hat for tomorrow night. The Department of Energy came back and said, we like your projects, but we would recommend that you do this, this, and that. So for our AMI MDMS project, the grid monitor or optimization, last year we submitted a grant for $20 million. This year we are upping it to $31 million because the recommendation from the DOE and from speaking with Congressman Moulton's office was you need to collaborate. In order to get federal funds, it looks better if you collaborate with other, in this case, MLPs. So we are partnering with the Peabody Municipal Light Department in order to strengthen our application. One of the areas that we were essentially deficient in is that Reading is a great community. Reading is a community that does not have Justice 40 tied to it. Justice 40 being one of the attributes in order to unlock this funding. We tried to use the Commonwealth's environmental justice platform to kind of delineate what we are, but because we're not a Justice 40 community, it reduces our chances in order to get the funding because it doesn't neatly check off that checkbox. However, our neighbors just across the street in Peabody, down the street, are a Justice 40 community. And by partnering with them, then this hopefully unlocks funding with the Department of Energy.
So what is Justice 40? What is that?
So as part of the grant requirements, you have to meet certain elements, certain requisite qualifications in order to gain access to the funding. Justice 40 communities are communities that have been impacted by pollution and all sorts of other issues that are more political than I care to discuss at this particular board. But because we're not specifically a Justice 40 community, it puts us at a disadvantage, say some of the other communities out there, which are Peabody, Lawrence, Boston, in particular, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Fall River down to the south, New Bedford. You get the idea. So in order to sweeten the deal to the feds, we figured, okay, let's see who can we partner with and who has similar projects. Peabody is putting in all new AMI meters themselves. So this opens up that opportunity, hopefully, for us to receive additional funding. And them too, yes. Well, we would be the prime grantee. I want to make sure the money comes through us and not through them. Probably shouldn't say that on recorded television, but I prefer to, yeah. Famous last words. I prefer that we're the prime grantee because there are all sorts of stipulations if you're a subrecipient, and there are all sorts of hoops that you have to jump through as a sub. And I'd rather position us in a place of driving the process as opposed to another municipality, another MLP calling the shots. So moving on to the second one, there is the flywheel demonstration. Again, the DOE came back and said, hey, we actually like the innovation of this project.
What is the project?
It's a story. Yeah. So the flywheel is a technology. There's a company, Helix, that's in our geography. It is literally a spinning wheel inside of a vacuum. It is primarily targeted toward power quality, and it has some limited capabilities to do storage. It is been designed to match up with solar and battery systems to basically dampen the power coming out. So it's really a power quality device. It's kind of cool. We originally were trying to see if we could make it work as a storage device. It doesn't go quite as long, but we can use it as a power quality device for some of our larger customers.
Power integration is one of the toughest things. When you produce energy, it's great, but to tie it back into the grid,
But all synchronized.
it has to be synchronized, and it's not always so easy. And how you manage that is becoming more and more problematic. And because you got to be able to match and equalize things, so that becomes technology wise, it becoming harder and harder for any distribution company, which that this is.
So just like the previous grant that we discussed, the feds came back and said, we like the idea, but we recommend that you resubmit by partnering with the other MLPs. We have 4 other MLPs, and I'm going to try to name them off the top of my head. Beld, Taunton, Westfield, and Holyoke are the 4 other MLPs that are
The first one?
Beld.
Braintree.
Thank
Taunton.
They're all big utilities.
Yes.
They're all sizable.
Yeah.
Utilities.
Braintree is about half our size. Taunton's, depending upon which you count, they're similar to our size.
Taunton has a power plant.
Westfield, they have a power plant that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
And then, Holyoke is, obviously Holyoke and Westfield are
Yeah.
western part of the state.
Yeah,
All good, well-run organizations.
Right,
It's good to have them on as part of the group. And again, we're lead, we're prime.
And if the concept paper, because that is kind of the gatekeeper in order to submit the final grant application gets approved, then I will be reaching out, and we've been trying to get both the MWRA on board because they provide water here in town, and the MBTA on board because they provide service, whether it's commuter rail or bus service, rubber tire service to the area. So we're in the process of trying to see if we can bring them on board too. The idea is that through collaboration with other MLPs, other communities, and other authorities, it provides a very compelling story to the feds when they review these grant applications and dole out some of the money. That's what we're trying to do. And then the last one that we're working on, and I'm waiting to hear from Mass CEC when they're going to open up the application period, is something near and dear to my heart. When I was at the MBTA, we were all about state of good repair. My former boss and mentor said, state of good repair, get the decay curves down, make sure that we invest in track, power, signal, and so on and so forth. So the equivalent here. When was it? From 2000.
Oh, no, careful.
1958 to
Moving on, Dave.
So essentially, where I look at state of good repair here is our utility poles. And there is funding through Mass CEC or really through US DOE, but DOE, DOT, to provide really core services, funding for state of good repair projects. We're looking at hopefully $1 million for our pole replacement program in order to utilize some of that funding that's set aside from the feds. Once we hear back when
We replace them constantly.
it's
When has there been funding available for pole replacement?
so under 40-101D, it's for weatherization and hardening infrastructure against storms and catastrophic storms and storms of the century or the decade, depending on how you look at it. So this fits within.
Well, writing it down.
So I would like to try to get our utility poles replaced, essentially.
Well, paid, we're replacing, but additional funds.
Funding.
This is new sources of funding. That's where we're going with grants. Yeah, keep going.
Class B makes money. But I just kind of curious. Maybe they want something different. They might want cement poles, steel poles, I don't know what it is.
Concrete. Concrete.
No poles, no wires. So
No.
No poles, no wire.
That puts us, that's not happening. That's $12 million a mile.
We're working on it.
awful.
We'll give you, there's other projects that we're working on with other local companies, but it'll be higher capacity, smaller wires, so less wires ultimately, but higher capabilities, but that's. Well,
Just seems so antiquated, and it is.
well, yeah.
Anyway.
Any further questions?
Yeah, the only thing I gotta say is this is quite a refreshing discussion.
Yeah.
We're going after all these grants.
Mm.
I don't think in the past we've gone to this extent, so compliments to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I want to show, now, there's not in this slide, but I just heard the Healy administration is making available funding up to $100,000 per grant for cybersecurity, something that Greg's going to discuss later. And again, you know, the funding is out there. We have really good ties with our elected officials, whether it's local, state, or federal. We want to be able to utilize those connections in order to bring funding back to RMLD in order to address, you know, our capital needs going forward.
One other element, in addition to Ben being the champion to pursue these support from the rest of the group, but he also has a lot of experience. Once you get the money, there's a lot of grant management that's required behind it. So one of his past experiences is managing grants. So hopefully we'll get them and we'll know what to do. I mean, it's more than just put it. There's a process behind it.
Quarterly reporting.
It's a lot of reporting.
It's A133 audits. There's a whole
Streamlined process, I hope.
Yeah.
So good, very good.
Yeah, great.
So as we look out towards the future, grant funding is all well and good, but as we look towards carbon capture, with the carbon capture fuel cell, we are looking at ways to bond some of these funds. Right now, we're looking at two different types of bonding, revenue bonds and municipal bonds. Currently, at the last time I checked, and this was like the 20-year bond, it was at 3.24%. I believe those numbers have jumped ever so slightly up to about 4.5%. I've been reaching out to various municipal securities rulemaking board recognized firms. They're the body that kind of gives the green light as to which financial institutions have the capability to provide bonding and have the necessary infrastructure to make it work. I've reached out to Moores and Cabot in Boston, a firm that I've dealt with in the past. Greg just earlier today forwarded me another email, and I can't remember the name of the firm.
Another referral, yeah.
You know, reaching out to. The idea is that, you know, putting out bonds for long-term capital projects at advantageous rates, even though the commercial market is much higher. In terms of municipal bonds and revenue bonds, it allows us more flexibility in order to advance these projects to ensure that we meet our mandate of reliable, low-cost, non-carbon here at RMLD.
Good. You got a question? Okay, let me just say my feeling first. We have been told in the past that the department cannot do revenue bonds.
Okay.
We're not allowed to do that.
We'll research, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was the
Right.
similar, I was gonna ask the same
Yeah,
question.
the other thing on the municipal bonds, be aware that it's gonna have to be done through the town of Reading.
Correct.
So we'd have to go to Reading Town Meeting to get them to authorize this. So,
I'm with you.
so,
Part of the,
okay.
Good.
Yeah.
part of the other project you're working on.
Yeah.
Might give some flexibility for that, but go
Okay.
ahead. We do have a S&P rating.
Who
Go ahead, Bob.
said,
Then we're gonna go to Karen.
Yeah,
Next.
who said we can't go to the we can't go to the commercial market, because if we don't go municipal, right, then why this is a private, I think that should
Yeah, I
be
think, so I think what Ben's basically saying is, so what we had mentioned this before, right? We see sizable capital projects on the
Yeah.
horizon, and it takes time to get it up. So right now we're in the learning mode and you've got a sense already from how well Ben works on grants.
Yep.
So he's gonna be digging into all sorts of options. We'll report back when we get a little bit further down the road. Here are the options, here are the pros and cons, here's what we can't do, here's what we can do, and all that kind of stuff. But this is the beginning. I think the key thing he wanted to mention, or wanted to make sure that he brought up to you guys, is we're looking at it now. Right? We won't end up doing this process until next year at the very earliest, but it takes time to prepare. So that's a heads up. And the feedback is actually good timing in terms of, hey, there's cautions on this and cautions on that.
Yeah.
And that's why we want your input as a group to say, hey, don't forget about this. And
Right.
So it's part of the dialogue.
Haven't gone to town meeting, gotten beaten up several times and asking for bonds.
No way.
Yep.
I know.
Been there, done. that. Okay. All right, Karen, want to say something? Karen? Recognize you.
Yes, no, I'm really glad to see this. We're in an incredibly low borrowing market, even with the recent rate increases, and Reading does have a AAA bond rating. So that means we borrow at the best rates, and by extension, so can RMLD. And Phil, I've been on town meeting for 23 years, and I know you may have been involved longer. So in 23 years, there's been no beating up of RMLD coming forward for bonds. So nobody's asked in 23 years. So it's definitely a different time. And we like our low electric rates. So I don't anticipate that RMLD coming forward and saying, this is how we're going to meet state law, and this is how we're going to keep your power reliable and low, is going to meet with a lot of opposition. But the real reason I raised my hand is that I just wanted to say that our CFO, Sharon Angstrom, would be more than happy to, introduce you to our treasurer who issues our bonds, and walk you through who we're using and how we're doing it, and lead times and all of that stuff. The last time we issued significant bonds, town meeting, it wasn't a special town meeting, but town meeting approved a project in November, and the select board was signing off on bonds. I don't know if this would work the same, but the select board was signing off on bonds by the end of the year. So it doesn't have to be a year-long process, but to get something in front of town meeting, you want to be several months in front of the next town meeting. Although, and I will give you a heads up for your planning purposes, we may be looking at a special town meeting in late August this year. And once you schedule these meetings, then suddenly things come up that you want to deal with. So, but this is great. This is appropriate. I understand you guys are trying to do a lot of capital investment, and it makes no sense for the ratepayers to try to do it on a cash basis. So I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Up there.
Power supply.
All right, now we can move on to power supply.
Motion first.
You want to make the motion?
Sure. Move that the Board of Commissioners, on the recommendation of the Citizens Advisory Board, vote to accept the General Manager's recommendation to add additional supply contracts delivery starting as early as 2029 from Seabrook and/or Millstone nuclear facilities, such that total nuclear does not exceed 40% of RMLD's annual power supply portfolio.
Great, thank you.
Great.
So,
Yes.
a little over 2 years ago, we put that up to 40% limit in a motion that we did back in December of 2021. Obviously, you guys know that we manage the power supply on a regular basis. What we're talking about here, we are in good position, but if you look at the chart here, as we've talked about before, we have a better sense of what our load forecast is going to be. It's roughly going to be 2x by 2050. That's very consistent with the ISO New England forecast. Is it going to be exactly 2x? I don't know. Right now, our load forecast is about 650,000 megawatt hours. We're expected to be in the range of 1.3 to 1.4 million by 2050. There are only there are 4 reactors in the region, 2 at Millstone, 1 at Seabrook. We have contracts with both of them. We think we think the timing is right at this point in time to make another addition to our nuclear contract. We will be pursuing both Seabrook and Millstone. Part of the reason why I think now is the time is that we have a better confidence in terms of what the load forecast looks like. That open to be contracted is exactly what it says. We need to contract it. We're not going to contract all of it, but we think it's appropriate to do it now because there is a limit in terms of the output of those 2 facilities. The other element is those 2 facilities are realizing their uniqueness in the marketplace. So the current costs are higher than they were a year ago. And so we think it's prudent to take another chunk into the portfolio of nuclear. So that's the big picture. We think it's prudent. We think it's timely. We're going to negotiate if I go to the next slide, we know the location, right? The incremental volume is from that previous slide will change over time. So we're finalizing what the load should look like. We'll probably start it in 2030 realistically, but we might start it as early as 2029. That's why we're at the motion to give us that flexibility. And it'll increase somewhere below 150,000 megawatt hours by 2050. Again, that's still at that point in time at 150,000. We'll have some contracts coming off at that point in time. All said and done, we're trying to be roughly at a third of the portfolio to be nuclear. Oops. It's okay, no big deal. So the key piece is it'll have effects. Obviously, we have to have those going forward. As we talked about last time, those effects are making it easier for us to do higher compliance now. It'll be a 20-year term or 21-year term. The key thing though, pricing, we have our contracts and market forecasts. We go out to 2045 actually, but this particular snapshot, the pricing that we're looking at right now is not low. It's 5% above the 2030 portfolio that we currently have in place. Now, the good news that currently we have in place is a good low number because we've negotiated those over the past 4 or 5 years, but it's getting more expensive. So that's why I want to make it. And obviously, you guys know we don't get into the actual details in the public session in terms of what the actual prices are. Those are to be negotiated. But anyways, bottom line, we want to increase. We'll take another chunk. It'll be less than 5% of the total. We think that now is the time to do it. Questions?
Go ahead, Bob.
I don't know, Phil, if you ever entered into the first nuclear contracts here, but they're the backbone of the low rates at
Yeah.
RMLD. And to get that percentage locked in for that year, 2050 and 2030 and beyond, yeah, this is a no-brainer.
We should yeah.
Absolutely. To be able to increase that amount, my opinion, I think is
That's
an
why
absolute
we're
no-brainer.
Can you say again what triggered the availability of it? Was this always available or did something change with the?
No, at different points, the two supply. Well, so the key availability right now is Seabrook opening up another part. So they're trying to figure out what. So new supplies. The supply hasn't changed, but they're saying, you know, we're gonna sell out. We're gonna sell forward capacity now that we had originally hadn't planned on selling.
Okay.
And then to be real blunt, Millstone is not quite as proactive. Millstone is very closely aligned with Connecticut, the state of. They're the primary off-taker. We have, because we started back in the early 80s, in the very, pre-fill, when these plants were being built, we took a portion of Seabrook and both of the Millstone units.
We only went in one part of Seabrook. We didn't take the most expensive part.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a whole, between the two of them, we have, I think, 18 different slices of these two projects. So anyways, it's back to Bob's point. It is literally the backbone. It is particularly the earlier stuff. It is the lowest cost in our portfolio. Now
they're investing in new capacity there.
So it's a very good point. Yeah, they're selling existing capacity in the future where they hadn't been before. But the working assumption that we are on is that these 3 reactors will continue. Well, in the case of Seabrook, they're licensed through the end of 2049 2049, January of 2050. Millstone, one of them, the license expires in 2035, as we heard at the NEPA conference last, and they're in the process of relicensing that. At some point in time, the relicensing will end. There are no new large-scale nuclear plants currently forecasted in the region, and there's the other prospect of small modular reactors. And the other element is that while those are interesting and fascinating, they are taking longer to materialize, and there's a question of will they ever come in. So at the end of the day, back to Bob's point, we want to capture. We have an opportunity to get some additional capacity. The timing's right. So to answer your question, it's being opened. They're allowing more, but no new capacity. It's fixed. It's like hydro. No new hydro facilities. We chase those like a hawk.
Correct. Seabrook preceded me, believe it or not.
Preceding you.
Preceded
you
before I got here.
and Millstone.
Yeah.
It's a compliment to those facilities and you. Anyways, we'd like to have the motion to allow us to contract.
Further discussion, questions?
Yeah, just a question. What happens, agreeing with all this, what happens if there's a problem with the plant? And it's not operating? What?
So
portion
one of the things, in the other contracts that we've signed, it's called firm, right? And so we're trying to do firm with this one, but they're not. So when they say firm, if the plant's not there, they're still committed to provide us power from other sources and effects from other sources, whatever. So firm is, not that we don't care, but their responsibility is to deliver. We're working on having that firm included in this one. It'll
But
be
it's not right now.
It's not right now.
How would they even do that though? Where do they get suddenly all this power from? That what are they about?
They're
Gigawatt,
well,
100 megawatt plants?
it's a 1.25.
Yeah.
It's a big gigawatt. Yeah, it's big. NextEra is the owner of Seabrook, and Dominion's the owner of Millstone, and they have huge. They have the ability to find power elsewhere. It won't be nuclear. These are only nuclear facilities. But
I just wonder, like, that's in a contract and they say it, but then if something happens to the plant, they go belly up. I'm just saying.
could be,
Yeah.
and that's part of the reason why in these kind of, well, they're only people to deal with. These are NextEra is, that they own the Florida Power and Light. It's the largest U.S. utility. I mean, these guys are in Dominion. I mean, these guys are massive. Yes, they could go belly up.
I'm just wondering, where do they physically get 1.25 gigawatts of power if they had to?
Mystic Station. It all comes from Mystic. The magic of buying and selling power is such a charade. It literally comes locally. I'm buying my power from Texas. No, you're not. You're buying it locally. It's a market. You buy it on the market, right? Let's be real.
Yeah.
Right. It gets produced. What gets produced locally gets distributed locally.
Right.
You're purchasing it from someplace else based on a rate, based on a market. That's the way this game works right now.
Yeah.
So you're buying into that contract to produce that chart. So you could produce the effects and recs to sell it
Yeah.
over time.
You're
Right.
exactly right.
But if they go belly up, they go belly up. Your contract, they can't produce the power. The power stays on the grid. Somebody else produces it. It's just like anything else. Some station goes down, a dam breaks, same idea. It's you're entering into a long-term lock contract that basically locks up a third of our portfolio, and which I think is a good thing.
Oh, I do too. I'm literally asking,
Yeah, this is learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what happens if a 1.25 gig plant is not here?
Well, yeah, and that's the other element is that the capacity of the network is roughly about 31 gigawatts. So while it's significant, there's a lot of other power, and our average load or our peak load regionally is about 24 to 26. So there's a buffer already built into the system. That's the role that ISO New England takes, right? They don't manage the generation plants, but they administer to make sure the right guys are turning on at the right time, and back to all the synchronization that Bob mentioned earlier. They do they do a really good job of managing our regional network, but it's not easy for them as much as it was.
Is it true what I've read that the Pilgrim plant produced half of all of Massachusetts carbon-free energy?
Probably.
When it was running,
It's not running anymore.
not running.
Well, they're closing Mystic, so a reliable energy source locally is disappearing. So now you are relying on hydropower coming in. Now you are relying on those three existing nuclear power plants to stay online running. The Salem, there's Sandy Point. There's a lot of them out there, but those are the ones that produce the power locally that you're using. How you buy it is something completely different.
And just to reinforce, that Mystic Station is 1.6 or 1,600 megawatts. It's sizable, and it is closing May of this year. So that's going to come off the grid, and that's also part of the reason that we're proceeding down the concept of non-carbon but in-territory generation. Right, we're not trying to get completely unplugged, but we need to have a little bit more capability of sustaining part of our load. So all of it ties together. That whole market is becoming. We talked about it before. It's become more fragile. We heard about it at the NEPA conference. Gordon talked about it. He calls it energy adequacy, but it's becoming challenging. So is it perfect? No, but this is a good time to strike.
Okay. I'm gonna tell us we didn't get a second. Is that right? We did not get a second? Pam
Yep.
second, okay. Further discussion? See none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Carries, let the record 5-0. All right, we're going to incentive programs.
Great, go ahead. This is a kind of a quick snapshot. I want to talk more about where we're going, but just to give you an idea of where we are. So this is the efficiency and electrification charge, the EEC. It is applied to all kilowatt hour sales that are sold. Yeah, it's okay. It's all good. So the EEC charge, it is tied to every kilowatt hour sales, whether it's commercial, industrial, school, whatever. The source, so this is collected from ratepayers, and it is the source of funds that pay for the residential and commercial incentive programs. It runs just like the Mass Save program, that Grid and Eversource and Unitil, et cetera. I mean, there's a little bit differences, but basically the funds that we pay out in incentive programs, I mean, all the money that we have currently until we get more grant dollars and ITCs and PTCs, et cetera, it comes from our ratepayers. So this money is basically, we collect it and then we try and encourage different behaviors. In the residential incentive program, just to give you a little bit, the big ticket item is heat pump and weatherization, right? That's where almost, so 700,000, we're trying to continue to promote air source heat pumps, but we're also looking at, we did a pilot program on our weatherization incentive program. We started that last June. That's actually been, we put a limit of $2,500 on it. It's been well received. But we're going to continue pushing that forward. The real focus is to drive the air source heat pumps, but weatherization is part of that. Just for ref, so that's the big piece of it. We have, EV panel upgrades. We still have solar energy stuff. The reason why the solar is going to be halved, solar is not residential solars. Because our rates are so low, it is not an obvious economic investment for ratepayers within our territory. There are those that have it. We've got it on just under 300 systems installed since we've been doing this since 2014. It's not a big number because if you'll do it for a whole bunch of different reasons. Economics isn't the key. It's not an obvious driver. Like if you were if you had a higher kilowatt hour energy charge. But the other thing that we had talked about last time is that we are going to go back to the incentive rate that we had 2 years ago. We tried to increase it. We doubled it. There was 2 years ago, the state had $600 a kilowatt, and we had $600 a kilowatt. The state said this doesn't make any sense for us to be funding that anymore, so they stopped. We wanted to see if we could keep the momentum going. We basically doubled ours. It hasn't really moved the needle in terms of volume, so we're going to basically reduce that and move it more toward air source heat pumps as opposed to generation. In the case of the commercial side historically was LED lighting, but 2 years ago we stopped the LED lighting program because the only thing you could really buy for the most part were LED lights. And remember, the idea behind incentive program is to encourage somebody to do something they wouldn't normally do. So there were times when they could buy other types of commercial lighting, and LED was at that point in time more expensive and less likely. By the time 2 years ago came around, we were just basically using the incentive dollars to buy lights for anybody who was putting new lights in. So that's why we stopped it. That 198,000 for 2023, where it takes time to run through the installations, the process, et cetera. So that's why there are still money being spent in 2023. Or we're going to try and do some commercial stuff, but the real driver is the commercial custom. We looked at lighting controls and building management controls. The real focus right now are on high performance air compressors, VFD drives, that kind of stuff. So it's a custom program. We're trying to get some legs on it. It won't be but it's not going to be at the same level as the commercials. Let me go back to the big picture. We're collecting roughly 2.5 to 3 million. Our intention is to have the year-end balance be somewhere around $1 million, just so that we can run it. We might try that down to $1,700,000. That administrative expense in the middle line are basically subscription fees and some allocation of the IRD time and some of the fees that we pay to E&E to process all this stuff. Big picture, we think it runs pretty well. Changes we're about to make. We talked about the weatherization program. We talked about the PV rebate. The other thing that had came up in 2 sessions ago was, do we want to explore financing options? We're exploring those. We don't necessarily want ourselves, since this is ratepayer money, we don't want to be the bank. We don't think that's the proper role, but we still, air source heat pumps in particular are not inexpensive installations. And so we're trying to see if there's a mechanism for us where we can help make it easier, either with local banks, potentially buy downs. There's a bunch of different programs that other utilities have tried. We're going to learn from them, but we're going to explore the financing options where we're part of the petition aid element. The intention is not to fund them completely. That's not the goal here, but to find another way to help. So that we're going to explore that as well. That's just a quick snapshot. Questions?
Two items. I think the first one, external water heater controls. Majority of folks have electric water heaters. One idea is that you use a huge amount of energy heating that tank at non-use times, right? A simple controller with a rebate that's very easily installed might be a big ticket item and be a significant one that we should put on the list. And then secondly, I do think you should tie insulation, weatherization is significant. So I guess maybe I'm not tied into so much of insulating a home as beneficial, if not more beneficial, to retaining heat as just a heat source pump. So I don't know, are you when you say the weatherization, do you have to do a heat pump in order to qualify?
Right now, we have it tied to a heat pump.
Yeah,
So the reason, and that, so relative to the water heater, we started looking at it, and that's a good reminder. You know, we should accelerate that, because that's, lighting used to be the big consumer of energy. HVAC always is, heating and cooling, but water heat is the next piece. So good reminder. Let's bring that to the forefront and get that done this year. Relative to the insulation, insulation is a very fast payback item. And remember, the idea behind an incentive program is to encourage something that they wouldn't do themselves. Weatherization, insulation and air sealing, which are the 2 primary things, are things you should do anyways. You shouldn't need an incentive to prompt you to do that. I say, what's the goal? Now, the other element is we're not in the gas business, or we're not in the oil business. And remember, the primary insulation works very well in the summertime, but it also is more significant in the wintertime. And so we want to be the thought process is we want to be very careful about using electric utility ratepayer dollars to cross support or cross fund oil or natural gas users. Do you follow? So we're being cautious. So we're absolutely going to expand the weatherization program. And one of the things, do we make it independent, or do we? So we haven't figured that out, but we're exploring it. We got it in place last year. We've learned quite a bit. I think what you're saying is, look carefully. Do you want to have it not tied to? It's a question, and we'll come when we come back to here's our final plan. We'll review that with you guys and look for input, etc. But the challenge for us is that we just want to make sure we're very careful with the ratepayer dollars that we collect, that we're not cross subsidizing businesses that we have no presence in. That's the caution.
No, and just maybe it's not a portion, it's a flat rate. And
maybe something
different. Yeah. But I do think that, a lot of people are interested in that. Part of that energy audit, you come out is a significant amount of
the first item.
Yeah.
It's always, it'd be literally the first item.
Yep.
Insulate. And then air seal. So
yeah, and we tell you do it on your own. That's kind of a bad message. Insulate, but
yeah, it's kind of a bad message, but literally the paybacks are like 2 years. So I hear you. And this is part of the communication. So we'll dig into it, but we're exploring more. We think it's worth doing. There you go.
Sure.
Go ahead.
On the previous slide, under LED lighting, you have 3 commercial customers under the commercial custom. Did you explain that already? What is 46,000 to $500,000?
So 46,000 is what the applications were. So we have, somebody has to apply for these in order for us to send the rebate out.
Mm.
Right, and so, all we had in the commercial customs in 2023, were basically, some VFD, there are 3 projects. One of them was the majority of that was well, half of that was a VFD driven air compressor. So a company basically buy an air compressor, they can buy a base load, a simple, non-particularly efficient one. But if they buy a more expensive one, but if they buy a more efficient one, which tends to be more expensive, then we will contribute a sizable portion of that incremental cost to encourage them to put a more efficient system in. So we haven't been very aggressive in terms of promoting that. We have a key accounts program, and we just haven't done an aggressive job. But as we look at everything that's available for a commercial entity to do, it's going to be in the custom category. There's no, we'll have air source heat pumps, but there's no big ticket items that are really easy to drive. These are custom ones. So we have to educate them in terms of what custom things. The quickest things are air compressors. Almost every manufacturing facility or every commercial building, not commercial, but every industrial building has an air compressor, and it is of the higher, it consumes a good chunk of the energy. So that's why we're chasing down those as an example.
I'm sort of surprised that there was only one EV charger, commercial EV charger rebate, and only one projected for this year, I assume, given the.
Yeah, probably one projected. It's probably,
do we have a sense how many commercial or municipal were installed in the territory?
We have a good sense of, I don't have it off the top of my head. We are looking right now. So we are expecting this year to have about 200 installed at the Amazon distribution center in the third quarter. And then there is a 16 gang Tesla supercharger that is also coming to one of the sites in our property. So those are 2 coming down. But in terms of and then we have, I think a total of 42 total at Analog. There are, we're also looking at the EV charger side of the equation in terms of how we motivate EV adoption. The EV charger rebate program, on the commercial side and on the residential side is one of the things that we're going to retool. It doesn't move the needle right now. And in fact, on the residential side, most new electric vehicles come with some sort of an EV charger installation on their residences. So it's kind of pointless for us. So we haven't figured out the new program.
So they're getting rebates from somewhere, but just not from us.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're getting elsewhere, but the commercial EV charger, it probably should be more than 8,000. Realistically, we'll push on that. But that's a different topic. I think at the end of the day, what you're really asking is there a way for us to encourage more EV adoption, and is EV charger the right way to do it?
Oh, it just felt like it was a very low number for what.
Well, the first one
would assume is happening in the.
The 2023 numbers, those are real numbers. Yeah, so I mean, that's what happened. It's not an overly generous one.
Yeah.
Commercial charging is it's a new game, right? If you're in an area that has a lot of car dealerships, they're moving pretty quickly. So I guess more on the commercial stuff, and I'll take the action item of the water heater, right? And we'll do something on weatherization. I'm not sure what it's going to look like yet. We're still exploring it, but good advice. Okay.
Good question. Do we know what proportion of water heaters are electric versus gas, or roughly? I think we used to know that.
We didn't. So we don't have any current. So one of the things that we were doing with the Reading Climate Action Committee is past couple of years we've been doing surveys, but it was on the heating, not on heating and cooling, not on water heating. I don't have it. We'll dust off the old stuff. I don't think we have a good sense, but I don't know.
Well, it's something you can get from meter data, I think, right?
Possibly.
The answer is yes. So I think if you just said how many people are gas, oil, heat, right? You probably 60-40 gas and around
Well,
here.
so we do have that. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
so
in ter-
then
It's
make it
60/40
jump.
gas on heat, 60/40 gas versus electric on heat.
Well, then if you say you have oil, right? Oil is electric, right?
Then you-
Odds are.
so oil's 47. So
I see.
on heating,
I see.
oil's 46-47%, gas is 50% of our
Okay,
territory.
so-
And one of the things that we did do is we did actually this year, we're successful in actually mapping out. We did a lot of exploration, but we were able to map out where all of the gas lines are in our territory. It was very helpful information. But to answer your question, 50, so heating right now in our territory, past 2 years, it's averaging around 50%, 47% is oil. And then the balance is electric for
Okay.
heating of the building.
So in other words, the assumption is that if a house is heating with oil, it probably has an electric water heater. Because
Yeah, I would say a high proportion of that, yeah.
My last house, not the one I live in now, I had oil, but it was
Indirect.
it was indirect off of the furnace.
The indirects are pretty common.
Right.
That's what I have.
Right.
Those last longer. so-
Right.
That's true.
The engineer, I'm doing that one, a little expensive, but yeah, long term.
Fortunately, new house, I have gas, so I have a separate gas hot water heater, which
Yes, every-
I've already had to replace.
I'm going to speculate that the majority of water heater is done by gas, but I don't have the data. And I'll check and see what old data.
On a gas home, yeah, I would say gas is gas.
Yeah, but remember, over half of our homes have gas already.
Yeah, right,
So
so you're
that-
saying
I mean, it's gonna be way the hell up there.
Yeah, so it's, but let's just say, okay, out of that whole number, you say, okay, it's half, and then out of that,
We can sell
maybe
more.
80%. You got a significant number of homes.
Yeah,
that-
it's a lot, no matter
a
what.
lot, no matter
Yeah.
how you look at it.
Yeah.
So, but just, it's out there, and they're somewhat, you put it in, they're supposed to realize a great return on energy based on control.
Electric or an air, or
Electric.
heat, an air source heat pump.
An
water
electric water heater controller that stops heating it 24/7.
Yeah.
It basically shuts it off at night, and then you
So-
can just control, kind of like a Nest. There's the same technology. Some of them have it.
So I think we'll dust, so on the water heater, there's a good thing that, starting point is like, what do you think the installed base electric water heaters are? And maybe what we tie into is not only, a water heater controller, but maybe, we put incentive on electric water heaters.
We used to have this.
It used to be an old, long time ago, it was a water heater thing.
We had one where, and it was actually controlled by RMLD, and it was using their broadband connection to, like, you could switch off whatever happened to be on at that moment from this headquarters.
Yeah.
And then they got antiquated, and one of them had a fire or something, and there was a decision made to remove all of them.
Yep.
But not replace them with something at the same time.
Correct. So that history is like, that's, mid 2015 to 2018, 2019. Yeah. But we're familiar with that program. But we'll dust it off again. I have no problem.
Right, I mean, it's, you don't want to have a 5,000 watt load switching on at 100-degree day at 4 PM,
You don't.
It's like, it's crazy.
Can be. So anyways, we'll dig into what, not just water heater controllers, but water heaters. I think that's great.
Further discussion?
Thank you. Good input.
Go on to the next item. So Greg, this way I'd like to do it is you.
Yeah,
you
I'll be
make all your
quiet.
Presentations, and then I think each of the commissioners, we're gonna base it on seniority. I'm gonna go first. Should speak as to how they feel as in terms of the review here, in terms of this is grade, proceed to the general manager.
Did you want me to walk through some?
Yeah, go through yours first.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. So I'm not gonna walk through I'm gonna give you guys the big picture piece. I mean, we're together every month. I'm gonna make a, so there's two pieces here. One is the categories. And we'll walk through the different sections, but I'm gonna go to when you're ready, I'm gonna go to the notes. This note, so you guys know who we are, obviously. But I look at this role as, it's a hands-on lead by example role. Right, and in a big picture, and I put this in the application 18 months ago. But the role, I think, is to provide vision and direction, allocate resources, and remove roadblocks. A lot of encouragement. And you guys know me, I'm a hands-on guy, so I'm really good at delegating. The mood and the attitude of the organization is very strong. But most importantly, what I want, as we walk through these accomplishments, these are accomplishments that the team achieved, right? You know, it is impossible for me to do. The GM cannot do all the individual steps. They need to be the leader. And so that last point there is very important, that the team got this stuff done under the leadership of the GM. And we got a lot done.
I assume it's not RLMD.
Oh, I didn't fix that yet. But next slide, please. That was me. Love that name. Okay, big picture stuff, you know, so I'm gonna go back to the structure, right, is what we put on the goals, right? Vision, team. So vision, where are we going? Team, it's all about the team's got to execute. We'll put a lot of automation, a lot of software, a lot of all sorts of stuff, but the team makes it happen. We're here to serve the customers. That's the next key piece. The platform is, you know, what do we use to deliver it? You guys know we talk about power supply on a regular basis. It's 70% of the cost structure. And as you know, Ben talked about before, right? We also need cash to make all this stuff happen. And we are transitioning, as you guys know, from a build mode and from a maintenance mode, which we were, where the load is level, to we're in a build mode. The world's very different. So you guys got that. So last September, right, we updated the mission and the vision, right? We laid that out, but the concept was something that we use as a framework for us to make decisions internally. And everybody in our organization knows this now. If you ask almost every employee, what's the mission, right? It's reliable to provide our customers with reliable, low cost, non-carbon energy, right? And I would the word increasing because it's not 100% right. That's been very helpful in terms of how I make our decisions. The other thing that we got done, I won't go through every one of these. I'll move for a little bit quickly, but in order to make the decisions we're going to do later on, we had to have a confidence in what our load forecast was. 2.5 years ago, the load forecast was top down, right? What are we right now? And, you know, what's a reasonable percentage rate? But now we've done bottom up. So we have a lot more confidence. And as we mentioned before, you know, ISO New England is a very good modeling team as well, and it matches pretty closely. We put together a high-level strategic plan. In-territory generation is a key piece of it, but so is the metering and the network and all these pieces come together. We have a couple of open positions still to fill, but we brought the IRT director in, Bill, back in February. At the end of last year, we hired the operations director. He started on the first week of January. We've made some organizational changes last year, a couple of several key ones. We focused on, we had started year before on the intern co-op program. We've expanded that. That's been very good. Remember, the goal of that program is to have the co-ops learn something about what we're doing here, to be basically a marketing team that goes back to the schools, but also to contribute stuff when they're here. That's worked out well. We've refined heavily last year. We did a lot of tests with the flex time and the 4x10 work schedule. I've had several discussions with many of you. We got to make sure we have coverage. We have to keep the operations running, customer service, etc. I was trying to get all this done last year so that when we start our negotiations this year, we can actually put it into the contract as opposed to make it part of side letters. We have to figure all that out still, but that's coming down the road. That last element, going back to team and personnel, a lot of encouragement of training and education. We have a tuition reimbursement program. There's 3 individuals I know of that are doing advanced degrees under that program. That's a good news. So the focus is, how do we develop our team? The customers, we talked about the weatherization program. We streamlined and these are all meant to be items that are not normal course of businesses, right? You know, I didn't mention that at the very beginning. You know, I know that several years back, you know, it's nice to walk through all the things we did over the course of the year, how many polls we put in. We put in polls every day. Well, actually probably almost every day. But what are the things that are distinctive about the year? Last year, you guys remember we put the economic development rate and the industrial coincident peak. It's still early in the game. We think those are going to be valuable. I went back and looked at some of the notes. Back in January, we did the customer survey. We do that every 2 years. But I hadn't forgotten about the results, but I'd forgotten we had done that back in January, February. You heard me over and over. You've heard customers, all sorts of people talk about communications. You know, we're trying to figure out more media channels, right? We've got a podcast. We're actually doing text communications for all new accounts. We ask them, we'd like you to opt in. So we're trying, because on the text, you have to have them opt in. We started the redesign of the website. with mobile web support. So we're doing more and more communication stuff. This is the stuff that's not just, hey, we got better newsletters. This is the stuff that's different from 2023. Platform. In earnest, we started Station 6. That's the new substation in Wilmington. We are transformers. We got the meter data management system in with the specified RFP process. We're doing the install literally as we speak right now. This third point here, critical software and hardware platforms were brought up to current versions. That was a very specific initiative. Many of these programs were 7 versions behind. That is a liability issue, or would have been a liability for an issue for us relative to cybersecurity. So everybody's up to speed. That's part of the reason why you saw more expenses on the IT side last year. Critical piece. And obviously we've accelerated employee cybersecurity training. We talked about the storage systems. There's a lot of work from storage. If we go back and look at all the stuff we did with IRED last year, that last item, or second to last item, pool transmission facilities, PTF, that is $500,000 that we started working on in 2022. We realized and got the paperwork. Ben's been supporting this as well. We've got some outside consultants helping us, but that's $500,000 of reimbursement of money that we have spent all the time that we never got reimbursed for. Just real quick, funding. Ben walked through this, but we're trying to look for outside sources of funding besides the ratepayers, and Karen mentioned it very nicely, right? The ratepayers are our primary source. We will do bonding, but there's other sources that we are we're actively chasing them. Last little pieces, right? So completed MCPPO, right? We did the design, construction, contracting this past June. That's kind of very relevant for the stuff we're about to get started on. You guys remember that's out of June through December, I was the acting director of operations. I'm still the acting director of engineering. We have another candidate coming for the engineering. The operations guys worked out very, very well. Areas for improvement. These are things that I'm going to be working on. Right? We talked about this, but at the last meeting when we talked about goals, but key metrics beyond the we have basic, actual versus budget, et cetera, dollars per megawatt hour, all stuff that we look at literally on a weekly basis. We sit down as a management team, Bill and Ben are the first 2 guys. What's load and what's revenue? What's our cash position? But we need to get a little bit more, what are the trend lines, et cetera. So working with the team to put those metrics in place. We'll share those with you guys too on a more regular basis. We have a lot of things happening here. And so one of the things that became clear to me as I was thinking through this is to communicate we know the projects and the initiatives, but prioritization. We can't do everything. And there are a lot of things that are on our list that we won't get to. But I think that's going to be very important, particularly given the magnitude of what we're working on. Colleen was actually one of the things that she and me did. They were very adamant about project management. I haven't been pushing that as aggressively. So, I'm not going to bring the needle quite as extreme, but I think project schedules and milestones are going to become more critical because we're now talking, and these projects are tens of millions of dollars. And it's not just the big projects, it's the little things as well. And then, I'm going to continue to be creative with how we do better communications. One of the things is there's new leadership coming into the towns, right? Reading, Wilmington in particular. We've got a really good relationship running with Linfield. Linfield was stay away until recently. And the last element there in terms of things that I'm going to try and do is more inputs, right? I originally have, continue to learning. We have a fast learning cycle. The conferences have been good. In a moment, I'll report back on some of the conferences, but I'm also part of a GM roundtable. And Ben talked about some of the MLP collaboration. So I'm meeting with Taunton on more regular. Anyways, I'll be quiet now. You got the big picture. So I'll stop.
All right. So let me just say that I did ask the CAB for their input. One member of the CAB basically said that he was very impressed with the fact that he feels that the present administration better communicates and is more transparent than the previous one. He was very adamant about that. He says the department seems to have more energy. Consider in the energy business.
Yeah.
One of the members of the CAB very much liked that Greg presents summaries of conferences he attends. which was not done previously on that. So those are the kind of the CAB comments. In terms of my comments, I've been very impressed with Greg with outreach to the different parties. I mean, we saw an example in an email today where we got a compliment from Mary Ellen O'Neill. Greg actually took the time to go out and sit with her and just exchange ideas with her. That's a great example of what Greg's done in terms of that, of sitting down and outreaching to talk to people. That's not been done in the past. Even the first time, he and I met in the early days.
Yeah, that's right.
In the early days when I had some issues, and he and I just kind of sat and we exchanged ideas. He's given more detailed presentations than the past. Again, echoing what one of the CAB members was, it's more transparent at this point. The land acquisitions have been fantastic at this point. The 2 land annexations that's gone on. The department's been very innovative at this point too. As we demonstrated tonight, the grants have been fantastic. Chasing the grants right now, and that has to come to the staffing. Greg has found the right people to put in the staffing in terms of going here now. I think we got a great example in Ben right here now tonight. Okay. In terms of that, it just seems that things seem to be going in a positive way here in the department. That's the best way I can summarize it up. The increase in retiring the Rex, and with not a great cost, was outstanding at this point. And I know Greg likes a challenge.
Yeah.
He likes a challenge. And I think he's taken this department and challenged it and run forward at this point. So those are kind of my thoughts. I've been impressed with Greg, and and I want to keep going. Keep going. Okay. We'll go to the next member. Dave, you're the next.
Yeah, I would say, I would echo pretty much everything Phil just said on all those levels. And thank you very much for all of that you're doing.
Mhm.
I don't really have I really would have said all of the same things Phil just said. In terms of overall strategy, I think we've talked about this one-on-one, is that as we get into this period of great growth of electrical demand and the need for all this new generation and storage, I do think we need to be thinking about how do we, and it kind of goes to what Bob was saying earlier, is why do you have to buy a heat pump to get weatherization? And I hear the points about, we don't want to subsidize National Grid, but I think we should be looking more in this direction of how do we control what's that?
Megawatts.
Megawatts is the word. Yeah. Like if you avoid, a megawatt, then you don't have to generate it. You don't have to store it. You don't have to build the infrastructure for it. And it's critically important for all kinds of reasons.
Good feedback. Yeah, no, it's good.
So I just feel like I hope that we as a board and you can be thinking about what are the things we can do. It's not traditionally what an MLP does, but I think it's a very important thing for all of us to be thinking about. And so really it's just a strategic thought that I wanted to offer, as opposed to, what the metrics were that you just put on the slide. If that makes sense.
No, it does. It's appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Bob, you're next.
I think we made the right choice, right? We brought you in, right?
I wouldn't go that far.
But no, I echo everything. I echoed all the hires, the people that come in. The energy change is palpable, right? It is totally a feeling change that was more than welcome, right? That come in. So I can't on those. That's an absolute positive. It just changes the dynamic, and I appreciate that. I am a practical, pragmatic person, right? I'm a distribution poles wires guy, right? That's a lot of this business, right? I think you've opened up in your discussions the other elements of the business that I didn't pay attention to, like the energy purchase, the accounting pieces, right? Very good presentations by everybody, and I always appreciate that. My one cautionary statement
Please.
is you're an idea guy, right? And you have a lot of ideas. There's a lot of projects. There's a lot of great things. We have to stay somewhat focused, right?
Yep.
On pick one, go with one. There's a million different ways to travel. We want to be a think tank. We want to be innovative to a point, because that adds overhead, right? 50 things on, you bring on 25 people to manage them. that's maybe not the right choice for doing it today.
Caution.
Yeah, just cautionary
Yeah, yeah.
on that, but I like the energy, I like the ideas, but just, that's why we're all here. We all work together.
Yeah.
That would be my, don't slow down the ideas, but let's pick a couple and then execute. But the land, getting those things done, that's where it's at. The practical forward looking stuff that's so important is being executed. It's been sorely needed for a long time here in now it's getting done. So kudos.
Alita, you're next.
Okay. As Phil said, your availability and tone and fresh perspective that you bring is very appreciated and it's consistent. And I think staff is fantastic that you hired. I really enjoy working with them. Thank you. And they seem to really like working here, which is, we all know that is awesome. I also, like Bob, appreciate your entrepreneurship, but agree with his ability, his suggestion that it be more refined and focused, partly because we're a board that meets once a month and my head's a little bit spinning with all the new ideas all the time, and they're big and they're new, and I don't even speak the language half the time. So that just for how I feel about that.
Yep.
It can be overwhelming. But to Dave's point about growth and the future of energy growth, also an overwhelming number. We're looking at doubling.
Massive.
Yes, and change is inevitable. And I was reminded today about, well, these headlines that Wendy's is gonna, in 2025, do a pilot program that's all over the news to adjust their pricing depending on what time of day you go there.
Oh, Wendy's is?
Yeah, it's a pilot program. People are up in arms about it.
More expensive.
Wendy's burgers.
Cares, right?
Guess what?
We
When
do
you
that
buy
with
it, it's 20.
airlines and hotels on weekends. And where you sit at a venue.
Yep,
Up front,
it's all
everything is adjusted.
individually priced, yeah.
So I would love to visit because change is inevitable and we have to be aggressive. An opt-out program or renewable or something. And again, I'm only paying, and we are not good at conserving electricity in our house. I'm doing the 100% program and we're paying about an extra $20. Some people of course can't do that, but I think it's demonstrative of how available the program is. And you can always cancel it if you don't want to participate anymore. It's
After the first year.
okay. And most recently, Rebecca Lieberman was so
Oh, yeah.
wonderful to come and participate, and that was important to her. And she followed up with me about it.
Oh, good.
She means it.
Yes,
Yep.
reach out to us too.
I would also love as a modification in the future to have this meeting incorporate what's going on with Climate Action Committee. We don't talk to them at all,
We do.
but I know you do.
Yeah.
So I don't have an idea for how to do that.
I'm not sure if Ray's gonna stay on the climate action or not.
I don't think so.
Okay, I didn't know.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But a recap or one of them present or once in a while.
Okay, so just tie it into this meeting.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Okay,
What they're thinking about, what they're,
Yep. Good, yeah. One of the things that we try and spend time on is good feedback.
so, that's it. I'd love on my way out the door to ask that you reconsider the opt-out program.
Oh, God.
I think we should put that on the future agenda. Let's put that for the
Definitely.
future.
May,
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Greg, for everything.
thanks for the support.
You're up.
So, obviously only having been here for 6 months. but Yeah, when you're technical.
Been a fast 6
right?
months.
Yeah, it has actually, it's been a fantastic 6 months and, fabulous board, but I mean, 75% of that is because of the time that you've spent with me to bring me up to speed and to talk about the operation. I, feel like I'm up to speed a lot faster than I maybe expected to be. And that's because of the time that you've taken and your team has taken to spend time with me on that. So I appreciate that. And what has been really telling about that is as I, sit in your office in those days, I see people popping by all the time. And to me, that is a really good sign of a great leader, because that means you've got an open door policy. People know they can go to you if they have an issue or they have a concern. They want you to know what's happening.
Mhm.
It's just that you're willing to talk, right? And I think that's a great sign of the level of engagement that the employee base has here, which sounds like is, you know, a change, which is awesome. When I think about, you know, kind of your characteristics, strategic definitely is the first one that comes to mind, collaborative, enthusiastic and positive, and ambitious. And I think those are all great things. So
What was the last one? And what?
ambitious.
Oh, ambitious, yeah.
So just a couple quick pieces of just feedback on the goals or sorry, the results. Because I wasn't here in January when you set the goals, I don't know if this is exactly what you said you were going to do, or if it's just what we did, or if anything was missing. So I would just suggest, you know, year over year, just say, this is what I said I was going to do here, and this is what I actually did. So, especially for the new folks who are here. And metrics, you were talking about the key metrics. Another great way to drive home the mission, you know, you could have a metric for reliability, a metric for cost.
We
and
do
a metric
actually,
for non-
yeah.
And, you know, I'd love to see that on the website when I pull up the RMLD site is reliable, low cost, low cost, non-carbon. And, you know, here I can go on and see it.
It's great on the website.
Which would be great. And then the last, just, you know, it made me remember when you said 2 to 3 conferences each year, you know, with the collaborations. I don't know if we have a schedule of that or where it might be beneficial for commissioners to join, but I might have missed it, but would love to just kind of plan that
Great,
ahead.
good. Yeah, we have a, go ahead, sorry. We'll do, yeah, if you want to, oh, absolutely.
The commission does have a budget for that.
Yes, you do.
I
Commission
do
has a
remember
budget
that,
for
yeah.
Okay,
but-
even though we don't spend
But I can't.
Well,
The whole
so
other issue.
let's-
it. The whole other issue we won't
we've
get.
got, we're gonna have, we have one still newbie and
Yeah.
a real newbie.
Yeah.
That will be on the
Oh, yeah.
board and an opportunity to plan that ahead and
Yeah.
do more of the things like we're gonna do next in a couple weeks would be great.
All right, so that's
Good
good.
feedback.
But
Thank you.
Thank you
We
for
have
your
all our-
support.
Just one more comment. I don't know if you could take credit for this, but the minutes are getting to me on a much more timely basis than the previous administration.
We're
Okay.
working to, she does most of it, the two of them, and, I'm actually, so, we're gonna have a third party as part of training, to help with those minutes, because you learn a lot by looking at the minutes.
Some of my other groups have experienced that too.
Yeah.
The only drawback was on the group I was in, you only had that for a certain period of time, and the meeting went beyond that. And so it dropped off.
So we're trying to catch up. We're good.
Yeah.
Particularly, yeah, we're good, yeah.
Yeah.
So but
So-
there's a plan to make that even better, so.
Okay, so you have to remind me now, we need to probably talk to you about your salary at this point, your pay. I don't know, I can't remember what the contract calls for at
Oh,
this
so
point.
it's built in.
Okay, I don't
Okay,
remember.
that-
I'm not get a chance to reach this in. It's kind of tax season, so I didn't get a chance.
Really
to
smart
look at
thing we
that in
did.
advance.
One of the smart things we did.
That's one thing you did.
That'd be-
But you remember what it is, Bob?
It's a annualized percentage rate with the bonus at the end of the year.
Mid-year. So the bonus is mid-year, and then we did a 4% increase.
Yeah,
Which I
great.
haven't yet put in place only because I need to get my team done before I do
Okay.
that.
All
But
right,
that's a
fine.
different topic.
But
I just
yeah,
wanna
we
cover
did
that
that for the
first.
course of the.
But at any
for the
point, in
course of
time,
the
maybe in the summertime, if you guys want to look at how well I'm doing on these suggestions, any adjustments you want to make would be warmly welcome.
Yeah.
I say that with,
Well, I think
with-
Pam's idea of looking at your goals here and then giving us an update as to where these different are, so I think it's an excellent idea.
yep, good idea.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, very good. Anything you'd like to add, Greg?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just, I think I've shared this with you guys many times when you ask me, how am I doing? It is a blessing. I enjoy this immensely, right? I mean, this is a, I just thank you for the opportunity. And I think that, you know, as you guys mentioned, there's an energy in this organization. It's just, thank you for the opportunity. That's the bottom line. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there anything that the board can do beyond, you know, what we're already doing just to to support you more?
Good question, good question.
Yes. So this goes back to communication. So, at whatever opportunities you, and I know you guys do this anyways, you guys have conversations throughout the community and outside and in businesses, et cetera. Just the concept of communication, just share the stuff that, the things that you think are important and worthwhile, not the garbage. I mean, we don't have a lot of, there's always dirty laundry, but it's like, I think we're doing a lot of good things. And so, sharing that where you can is good. And then the other element, many of you guys do this, but feedback. Hey, I talked to Mary Ellen, I talked to whoever it is, and there's an item, so just put that on your list. That's very helpful for me to keep track of stuff. So, you guys being part of that's what your role is not just, helping define policy that we execute here, but communicating out and bringing stuff that you hear back in. I know you guys do that, but informally is also welcome as well. I mean, when I say the space is moving, I mean, you're in the middle of it, Bob. Like we are just beginning to move it. The market is beginning to move at light speed, and we're not quite. We're still. We got 10-speed transmission. We're still at 5th, 6th speed, and we're going to be pulled into higher speed. So that's not a criticism. It's just you saw my comment about prioritizing all the initiatives. I don't bring all the stuff the crazy ideas that we're looking at. Anyways, so yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. And really, I try and send you guys updates. Feel free to ring me, text me, call me. Hey, come sit down with me. I've talked with many of you guys on one-on-one, and that's valuable because there's things that you guys are important to you guys that are good reminders to me, right? And look, my word association with you, and this is a positive, is the negawatt, right? And so it's like, because I'm a guy that wants to sell more, right? The expression we have is enjoy, we'll make more, but we have to keep thinking about efficiency because it does allow us to keep the cost structure down. So enough said. Thank you.
I just want to add that per Greg's contract and policy 19, we all need to collaboratively agree on the goals that Greg presented here.
Oh.
So the goals for 2024, which are.
We have to do that tonight.
Yeah, I would recommend doing that because we'll keep pushing it. We kicked it down the can already one meeting. It'll just be the second one we do it on.
I think there's like a dead timeline.
60 days. So these are what I presented. Do we have that?
I don't have a motion vote, but we could do. I don't know if in the past that we've done one, or you've all just collaborated.
That's a good reminder. I'm sorry about
So
that.
what do we have to do again? Please review that. I didn't pick it up.
Collaboratively.
You have to approve the goals that I presented last
Oh,
month.
okay, all right. Okay, so,
2023 goals, 2024 goals.
so,
Which are these?
yeah,
Those, yes.
so the motion should be that,
It's in the first part of that section.
the RMLD Board of Commissioners move to approve the GM's 2024 goals as presented relating to vision, team/personnel, customers, platform, funding, power supply. Okay, that should be the motion.
To
Yeah, should be,
vision team
yeah,
/ personnel.
yeah, vision,
Oh,
team,
okay.
personnel, customers,
Customers, platform, funding, power supply.
platform, funding, and power supply. So, you got that? You got the motion?
I got it. Yeah.
Okay, so, Eric, Marlena just moved the motion.
Wait,
Well, Sam just seconded it.
Okay.
Can we have a brief discussion?
Sure, go ahead.
Would just that along the lines of the negawatts idea, would you be open to adding a Q under power supply to explore or propose ways to reduce demand or similar? We could wordsmith it a bit, but explore new demand reduction initiatives.
Efficient, add the word efficiency.
Okay.
That's much,
So
so
what-
not
what's
reduction.
the
I think
correct word?
efficiency is the
Okay.
better word.
You know that those are two different points.
I know they are.
You
And
know,
I
right.
think
Yeah, I don't think-
reduction is, I would say your goal is efficiency.
Great.
Efficiency generates reduction.
Explore new energy efficiency opportunities.
Can I just ask, would that be under customers or under power supply?
Well, it
Feels
could
like-
be under,
Feels like a customer.
okay,
Could be.
I'll
could be
take that.
both.
You want to do it on customers?
Sure.
Okay, so that becomes,
So after customer, just carriage return.
actually, we could, wait, please, we have two M's and two N's. All right.
Oh, like, okay, so this should be tabulated.
It's a weird alphabetical thing going on here.
Okay, let's just do the customers. Explore new energy efficiency opportunities.
So that Dave's point, reductions in inefficiencies. Yeah, I'll include that. I'm sorry, Dave.
Okay,
So read this if you want to put the word energy efficiency program.
And
Programs.
Opportunities for retention.
drive demand,
Demand.
peak demand reduction or peak.
I-
Demand,
so-
Is that okay?
yeah, just add an S to it.
You want
That
more?
I think works. That's broad.
To drive, but you want to add the to
Yeah,
drive
to
the
suppress upward,
peak
No,
demand.
to drive,
Yeah.
drive is a good word.
drive
I love that word.
demand reduction, peak demand reduction.
Peak demand.
Well, just it doesn't matter what it is.
Speed demand reduction.
Fine, done.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, then we'll fix the
If there's no exception, I will accept that as part of the main motion. Okay.
Just gotta fix the
Okay, and
alphabet,
then
but
we'll do it.
I assume that administratively, there'll be a correction of the alphabetizing.
Yes, we will correct the alphabet.
Right, we'll accept the, okay, was that, second, that Pam seconded. Marlena made the motion, right?
Sure. Yes, I did.
Pam second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Great. Motion carries 5-0. Very good, thank you. All right, get the general manager report.
Okay, I'll keep this very crisp. It's
Yep.
8:30. There's a lot here. So this is part of the, go to a conference, what'd you learn? Yeah, go ahead. So go into. So anyways, this was public power. There were 200 other utilities across well, primarily east of the Mississippi. The host was Florida Power, well, NextEra, which is also the owner of Florida Power and Light. And so there were a lot of presentations by Florida Power and Light. I won't go through every, you guys can take a look at this. They're the largest utility. They're in a very different world than we operate in, right? They're in Florida. There is a lot of weather related stuff that they have to deal with. And they're in accelerated growth because of population change as opposed to load changes. The things though that take away, they are pursuing network instrumentation, AMI, that's the metering stuff, automated switches. So I'm pushing our guys we're already doing this, but we're accelerating that. They also expect EVs to be a major load driver. So, and we've got that built into our load profile. So, we're on the right track. This guy, Ed, there's a bunch of details in there. One of the things that I took away, they're getting a little bit bigger, but this LiDAR and AI for vegetation management. This is tree trimming for RMLD. We've got a lot of miles of wires that go through trees. And we're doing a lot of data analytics in terms of the relationship between tree trimming. Anyways, we're trying to automate that. We've already put some things in place. But that's that B element, explore vegetation management optimization. And they talked a lot about data analytics. So it's not just me. This other gentleman who was a development guy, just going to just quick highlights. He was mentioning water department synergies, and this is something that we are doing also as well. Starting the town of Linfield, but we also want to do, and part of this land stuff, if we get this done properly, it'll be a nice entree for us to do more with the Wilmington Water Department. We're doing some projects. Well, we're doing some transformer replacement with them right now, but that was kind of interesting. And that V2G is vehicle to grid. So again, one of the things that we'll be doing this year is we'll be putting a bi-directional charger on the public side of station one. It'll be out in front. So that's going to be the beginning of our V2G. We tried to get started on that last year. The software anyways, we're going to pursue that, and that's what they're doing as well. This guy, Chris McCarthy, again, this was NextEra Energy Management. He's in charge of research the key points, a couple of key elements here, right? Same thing we're seeing, but down in Florida, they're seeing, well, he's actually all East Coast, and California and Texas, but reliability of power supply is an increasing, he sees that as a trend across, the US, but specifically focused on Casio is California, ERCOT is Texas, and ISO New England. So, back to what Bob mentioned earlier about Mystic as being an example, but we're one of the 3 hot areas that NERC, which is the national group, is concerned about energy reliability. So we're, it's not new. It's just nice to hear that other people see that as well. Load growth is kind of interesting. The same basic thing. We're coming out of a decade of 0.5% load growth to somewhere between their load growth forecast 1.45. So same basic piece. The second to the last bullet in the key points, capacity cost. Now remember, our cost structure has energy, transmission, capacity, and certificate retirements. Right now, certificate requirements are very small. It doesn't cost, but it's very small. But capacity was very big in 2016, 2017. It fell back down again. We're kind of at a low. We'll be at a low for the next 4, maybe 5 years, but that capacity cost is going to start going back up. Right now, our number, as you can see in that bullet, right, we're about 3. The last auction was $2.59 a megawatt month. The auction just finished this past 4 weeks ago was $3.50 a megawatt month. But the forecast that's coming down the road is over $10 a megawatt month. That's going to be a big number. Again, another reason for us to manage peak demand, Dave, back to that key point, right? But also in territory generation, because we don't have that. So again, there's a whole bunch of key drivers, and this is just reinforcing it. And then this was the last piece, and I'll mention one last thing right after this one. But this guy was basically talking about the natural gas market. Natural gas, as you guys know, currently is about half of the supply. It is very volatile right now, but the warm weather that we've had that is forecasted to go through next fall has driven gas prices down and hence energy prices down in the eastern part of the whole US. That is going to change when we get to what he was basically sharing. He had 30 slides, but next winter expect upward pressure on natural gas, which is going to be upward pressure. So we're trying to take that into the context of how we look at our hedged versus unhedged positions, et cetera. It just goes, the core piece is continue to manage your power supply. The last comment that I didn't turn into a slide, because we're going to talk about it next month in the executive session, but there was a lot of emphasis on cybersecurity. And we as public utilities, right, there's roughly 2,000 of us in the US. We are not as the same scale as the grids and the Eversource and the Dominions and the FPLs, but there are nation states, not just individual groups, that are purposely pursuing utilities like us to gain control or put bots in to gain future control. We've talked about this a lot. We are very aggressive in terms of cybersecurity. We are going to maintain that vigilance, and it is appropriate right now. And that is not just making sure that you don't click on a phishing email. That goes back to that comment that we made before about making sure the software and hardware versions of our IT systems are up to. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that we're aggressively pursuing, and we are going to remain vigilant on last one. That's the last point. So those are the key takeaways. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and if you want the details, some of us think it's fascinating, but big picture, we're on the right. Bottom line, we're on the right path. I think is the key takeaway. That's my general manager.
We got the scheduling. Okay, March 7th is the New York trip. I will not be on that trip. Sorry.
Mr. Tax.
What?
Mr. Tax.
Yes, I know. When?
Who is attending from the board?
Who's going to the board?
I know Vivek's going. I'm 50-50.
50-50.
Yeah, I would like to go. I'm trying to coordinate it.
Yeah, I just cleared my schedule today. I should be able to.
You maybe.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
if I can go and look at this another time, but
We'll try and figure.
otherwise I rely on my valued colleagues.
All right, you've got the meeting schedule and also the DAB coverage. And we have the warrant schedule, although once we get past next week, that'll have to change.
Yes.
Unless Marlena wants to come in July.
Payroll.
Just one other update I have is on the Charter Review Commission.
Yeah.
At the present time, there's been a lot of discussion whether or not anything is in the charter electing the light department can be effective. We did have a legal opinion put together by Duncan and Allen. We went to a different law firm because one of the reliability of the previous opinions law firms were questioned. You know, so
Isn't that normal?
yeah.
Isn't that normal?
So anyway, we'll see. I'm used to see if the chair of the committee survives next week. Should be interesting, since I'm the vice chair. Yep. So with that,
Would anybody be interested in swapping out the 18th for one of the other May or June meetings?
April 18th?
Yes. I can, I would have to push it to the 23rd or the,
what are you doing? What do you say?
Dave, you want to swap?
Well, what's that again?
Would you be interested in swapping the 18th for the CAP meeting for the 23rd?
Sure.
Isn't the possibility the 18th to be town meeting?
But I think town meeting,
I think it would be Monday, Thursday that week.
That is a Thursday.
I try to do it not right.
Well, I need to attend the town meeting. We got
All right, so
Dan
And-
Q&A.
if you want to take June from me, Bob, I can take that day in April.
May would be better.
Yeah.
June, I might not be here.
If you want to do that, I can swap with you.
Well, I'll swap with Dave, Phil.
What?
But Dave and I will swap.
David, okay, fine, I don't care.
Thank you.
I always like to go to the CAB since the agreement I negotiated created.
Architect. Architect, there you go.
Okay.
Move.
What?
Ready?
What?
Move.
I think you should,
You ready for number 14?
Am I what?
Move that the
Okay,
board.
no, just one thing. I know we thanked Marlena for her service
Thank you. That's
over
very
the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think particularly the year she was chairman was particularly outstanding, where we had a new general manager and everything.
Well,
Yes,
It was hard as heck, but
Yeah.
you guys
Yep.
were awesome.
And with that,
We were a team.
I will accept the motion to adjourn.
Move that the Board of Commissioners adjourn regular session.
All right, is that second?
Second.
Move second, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody.